Welcome to Beyond Sunday, where we have a cup of coffee, a conversation, and cultivate our relationships with one another in Christ. Beyond Sunday is a podcast ministry of Kindred Church, broadcasting to you from beautiful Orange County, California. And now, here's your host, Tom Grossi.
Well, we welcome you to another episode of Beyond Sunday, where we have a cup of coffee and a conversation with a member of our worship and music ministry here at Kindred Community Church. My name is Tom Grossi. I'm your host for Beyond Sunday and the minister of music here at Kindred. And when I think about why we're doing this, some have asked, as we've had several episodes, and encourage you to go back to past episodes that we've had. During this time, especially when much of our world has been constricted to their homes and has been confined to even in places of employment that they can't even get to anymore and can't go about doing their normal things. That sometimes we have just a computer screen to be able to interface with the world that we once knew. And coming sort of, if you will, out of COVID, we've heard a lot of feedback from people that they just enjoy this kind of an opportunity and this kind of a medium, if you will, to be able to get to know some of the people in our church, to get to know some of the people in our music ministry. Many of you see them on platforms on Sunday morning, but you may not know some really fun and some unique and some great stories that they may have. And so that's why we're doing this, just a casual conversation with good friends and with wonderful people in the life of our church. And I think of conversation as a great quote by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. He's an American poet and educator that said this, that a single conversation across the table with a wise person is better than 10 years studying books. So I feel like I've gotten a lot of book studying done here as we've had a lot of great conversation with some guests. My guest here today is Laurie Driskill. Laurie, it is a joy to have you on Beyond Sunday.
Thank you for having me.
And we could probably talk about all kinds of things, but of course our common denominator is music, because we both love it and teach it, and I know that you're an educator. But before we kind of get into that, just tell us a little bit about you and your husband and your children and how long that you've been coming to Kindred. I know you also have been faithful to come to Kindred, and you live a little bit of a ways away compared to some folks that are a little bit more local. So first, just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself. I know there's a lot of people at Kindred that are new, that are just checking us out for the very first time in the last year. And I've had many people come up to me and say, who's that woman that plays that beautiful violin up there? And I'll tell them about you. And so part of the reason why I chose you as a guest is because people are just interested to get to know you a little bit more. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm a freelance violinist, but right now my main job has been homeschool mom.
Amen.
I'm homeschooling my 15-year-old, and she has two older brothers that are grown. But I'm here with my husband and my daughter, and my husband's a United Airlines pilot. He used to be an Air Force pilot, and now he flies for United. And it is a bit of a drive to get to church. We came to Kindred when we were looking for a new church. We were about to start looking for a new church, but we decided to visit Kindred first and just get refreshed, because I had heard Pastor Philip on the radio, and I have some friends here, Donnie and Stella Roach. And so we thought we would just visit, and we liked it. So we kept coming, including my daughter, who was about 12 or 13 at the time. So we've been here about
Emily,
2.5 years.
Right?
Emily,
yeah.
And she loved it. She said, this needs to be our new church.
Awesome.
And we thought, well, we might need to find a church a little closer to home, but this is home to us.
Well, it's been our gain in so many ways to have your entire family with us, and I know seeing Emily in student ministries is really cool, and you guys have just jumped in with both feet and have gotten involved in ministry, and for that we're the better for it and grateful that you're here, and I'm grateful for you and your gifts and your talents. And I was intrigued when I heard about your husband's occupation as a United Airlines pilot. Some very dear friends of ours up in Northern California also flew for the Air Force, and then spent many years with Eastern Airlines, and then for about almost 20 years, I think, served in left seat with Southwest Airlines. Now, your husband, is he international or domestic? Does he?
Mainly international.
Wow.
Yeah, he prefers that. He likes the way the schedule works out. You end up being gone for a few days, but then you get to be home longer before you have to head out again.
So tell me how that's like for you. Like you're homeschooling and handling a full load of that, which God bless you for doing that. But then you're alone for a couple, 3 days. He go to London. Where will he go? Will he go?
He goes to, it varies, but he goes to Europe and Asia mainly. So he's gone to London and Frankfurt quite a bit. And he goes to Tokyo, and he's gone to China. He's done some Air Force charters, but with United Airlines to China, and he's done a lot to Australia. So he goes. So it's a little hectic when he's on the way out the door, and then he's really tired when he gets back. But I'm a little bit used to it. I think. Because it's always been that way. I've gotten used to it. He's only gone for 2-3 days usually at a time. And so I do have to sort of just plan to, I'm always the one that drives my daughter. Actually, he picked up my daughter today.
Nice.
Because I'm here. But I plan on driving her where she needs to go. And I learned to fix a few things around the house. I look it up on YouTube.
Good for you.
And so, because things happen sometimes, if there's going to be a plumbing problem, it's probably going to happen when he's gone.
Yeah. And you can't quite have him help you when he's in Tokyo.
No. So
Right.
I've just gotten used to it, and I can usually get a hold of him. But if not, I've learned a little bit on who I can call in the meantime. But usually I can get a hold of him once he gets on the ground. Now there's internet. Sometimes I can get a hold of him when he's flying.
Wow. Now, did you meet him when he was in the Air Force?
When I met him, he was off full-time active duty, but he was in the reserves. So he stayed in the reserves for a total of 30 years. So he retired as a colonel. But he was always in the reserves when I knew him, and so I was used to that too. So he'd go, and then he also went to graduate school while my daughter was young. So I'm a little used to it, but I'm glad that he's not in school.
What did he
now.
fly in the Air Force? Do you know what planes he flew in the Air Force?
Yes, I know the main ones.
A big one.
A couple of big ones. There's the T-38.
Yeah.
And there's the KC-135.
Wow, you've got them all memorized.
KC-10, and probably a few others. But those are the main ones. And when he retired, right before he retired, or shortly before he retired, he was the commander of a squadron of KC-135 pilots. He was also KC-135 pilots. He was also deployed since I knew him, but it was just for 3 months. So it wasn't as bad as it could be. So
wow. Deployed to Middle East?
Yes. And yes.
Afghanistan? Or?
And Turkey. And I mean, he was like based in Turkey, and they were flying in and out.
Right.
So
well, we're grateful for your husband's service and grateful for you of being able to, it's not easy being a military wife, and to be able to know that your husband is many oceans away serving, and so we're grateful for you and know that that's a challenge. But boy, every time I see you, you seem to have it all put together. So you you must navigate it perfectly.
No. There's traffic.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, Laurie, I know you're a music educator, and I would love to kind of just pick your brain a little bit on that, because I know a lot of musicians are, of course, watching our podcast, because we've had musicians in Kindred Worship Ministry that I've been interviewing. So tell me a little bit, and tell our listeners a little bit about your experience. You play a phenomenal violin, and you're an excellent teacher. And you have just a professional and a great spirit when you're playing with us. And again, it's my total privilege to be able to have you serving with us. But maybe take me back a little bit. When did you first start playing? When did you first pick up the violin? Was that your first instrument? You're not all, I know you're not only playing violin, but you're an excellent worship leader, a pianist, and you lead for many of our women's ministries events, which is awesome. People tell me just rave and how much they love of your leadership with our women's ministries, and Cam Woodward, our women's director, just loves having you serve. So kind of give me a little bit of that, especially people who might be first learning to pick up an instrument and maybe scared to death of how difficult the violin may be. Walk us through that a little bit. How did that go for you?
Well, I started piano first. My mom taught me some, and then my older siblings were getting lessons, and I just begged and begged and begged. And my mom said, yeah, you can get them, just not yet, not yet. And I just begged and pushed until I got the lessons, and I loved it. Just loved it. And I even wrote music, sort of Mozart imitations, when I was really young. But once the lessons got rolling, I stopped writing music. But I really liked it. I said, I'm going to be a pianist when I grow up. And then that was when I was about 5. But when I was about 8, they were offering strings at school, so I took violin.
Wow, at 8 years old, wonderful.
Yes, and I wasn't serious. I didn't even care if I did it or not. It was just my family said, well, we have a violin already because my sister had done it. Do you want to do it? And I kept saying, I don't know, I don't really care. And then I said, okay, I'll do it. And I loved it. I mean, at first I didn't really care. I just found it sort of easy because I was doing piano and
background.
Because it was not very demanding what we were doing at school. It was just to get your feet wet. But I eventually got private lessons, and then when I got to play in orchestras, I was won over. I said, practice by yourself or play with trumpets.
Right.
I mean, I was just won over. And so in junior high, I was doing both piano and violin, and for a while, didn't know which one I wanted to favor. But eventually, by the end of junior high, I thought, I want to play in orchestras the rest of my life. And so that's what I do. So I still play piano, and I'm glad I stuck with that. I still took lessons for a few more years, and I'm really glad I did, because you can't sing and play violin at the same time very well. You mostly can't.
Right.
And I'm just really glad. I accompany my students. I teach private violin lessons, and I accompany my own students. I won't always be able to if they play something really difficult like a Beethoven sonata. I don't know that I could do a good job with that. But so far, I've always accompanied my own students.
You know, as you're talking, Laurie, it reminds me of a question that's been asked of me, and I'm always curious to know of another musician gifted like yourself, of what would kind of be your answer to it. Some people have asked me, well, if I've got a child and they're 6, 7 years old and they're interested in music, should I take piano first and get a good kind of a grounding and a sense of theory and then move to a more of a specialty instrument? Or should you just plunge right away into the instrument that they absolutely choose, irregardless of whether it's a piano or not? Or would you try to kind of steer someone piano first? Or do you think that really matters a whole lot?
Right. I don't have just one answer for that. It worked out really well for me. But
to start with piano.
Piano. But I actually think if you want to study violin, or if you want your child to study violin, I think starting younger than I did, is best. It's sort of like ballet. You need a lot of time, and starting early is also helpful for just getting in this position. I've noticed that when people start later, they say, this hurts. And little kids are so flexible. So I don't know. It worked out really well for me to start on piano, but I don't think you have to.
Right.
But then if you're going to, some people, they're going to end up playing bassoon, which they've never heard of when they're 5. So do piano, Or if the instrument is too big, that the one they're interested in is too big. Maybe starting piano. Piano is good, or just a general music class. I actually went to that first, and so did my daughter, with the kind that the little toddlers go to, and they just clap and sing. They don't have to do that, but it's good just to have lots of music and lots of music playing, quality music playing. not just the radio, but
Mm-hmm.
good music playing for the children to hear from a young age.
And when you learned at a young age on strings, what was the method that they taught? Did they do more traditional? Was it Suzuki, Kodai? Is there a particular kind of method that you sort of feel strongly about for young kids to learn to play violin?
Well, when I learned, see, 8 is not considered young, so for
Right,
violin.
right.
So, and what we did was, I don't know what you would call it, but we were learning the kids were learning to read and play at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, we could barely play anything because we're just learning to read it and then play one more note and then play one more note. So it's going very slowly. But I didn't care because I already knew how to read the music. But and so I was sometimes a little bored with that. But it's not that easy to learn to just hold the instrument properly. And with private lessons, you're going to learn to hold it properly. If you do it at school, they can't give you that much attention to make sure that you're holding it properly, and it's really important. So that was what I did. But when I teach, I do lean towards Suzuki method, at least for the beginners, especially if they're really, really young. But I like to teach some things without them having to look at the music. I would rather them hold it properly. If they look at the music, here's their good posture, and then they immediately do this.
Yeah.
And so, and not only that, but they've got
Then the intonation drops and everything gets bad.
It's really easy to see the difference when they don't. So when they look at the music, and then sometimes they say, okay, you probably have the first line memorized, just play it for me, and they immediately play it better. And also just a lot of things to have to think about at the same time. If you have to think about this and this and this and what you're reading at the same time, it's just a lot. So what I do when I teach is I teach them without reading the music, and then I introduce the music reading a little bit later if they don't know how.
Brilliant.
Because some of them have played piano.
Brilliant. It segues great into kind of my next question, Laurie, and that is, what would maybe be some advice that you could give someone who is right on the edge of either learning a stringed instrument or learning piano? What's some things that you've learned along the way, musically speaking, or even professionally in your career, that you learned either from School of Hard Knocks or you just learned from doing? You said, of course, practice and be involved and get involved. Don't just stay by yourself, but involvement in an orchestra and involvement in an ensemble. There's so much that you can learn and grow in your individual musicianship when you get outside of yourself and you learn to play along well with others. You've already touched on that, but what other advice might you have for someone who's wanting to get into that instrument or any instrument?
Well, I recommend the private lessons. Of course, they're pricey.
Yeah.
So they're great, but they're worth it. You know, and if you go the cheapest route with the recent high school grad who knows how to play it, you're going to end up having more lessons to learn the same thing because, I see it now. I did teach when I was in high school, and I'm a much better teacher now. I used to know how to play. Now I know how to play, and I know how to teach. But so private lessons are good. You're listening a lot. You can learn some things on YouTube. I'm sure you could learn a lot of guitar on YouTube. You could learn some piano on YouTube. I wouldn't recommend trying to learn violin on YouTube, though. So, and definitely playing in groups, or if you have a child who's learning, if they are doing it just by themselves, sometimes it's just lonely. So that's another thing that the really traditional Suzuki teachers, which we have one on the team, they're really big on having the private lesson and the group. So the group is good for encouragement and fun, and the private is good for details. But I'm especially talking about violin just because violin has so many details, and it is kind of like ballet. There's always something that can be improved. There's this and this and this, and the pinky, and the thumb, and the angle of the bow, and it just goes on. And I'm actually surprised at myself that I learned because I don't think of myself as particularly disciplined. I think I was, because I was young though, and I was having fun, and I just wanted to have fun.
Yeah.
And also, if I sounded bad and squeaky, some adults don't like it when they're trying to learn. I was teaching my sister, and she was enjoying it at first. And she said, I just want to play Pachelbel Canon, and I want it to sound beautiful. And she knew she didn't sound like that. But when you're a kid, you think you do.
Yeah.
You think you sound good. So it worked for me. So yes, and you do have to practice, of course. And I think also, yes, getting around, good players, because I think I was blessed. I was around some really good players and good teachers, and it just rubbed off on me. I don't think I had it in myself to just try to reach for the highest I could go. I was trying to keep up with my friends because they were auditioning for an orchestra, and I didn't want to be left out. So that's kind of how it was. And my parents were very helpful, and but anyway, for people that want to learn something, if you're not so young and you don't have parents who are going to pay for it, maybe you can get some lessons, and it depends on the instrument too. But
that's inspiring. All that to hear is great, Laurie, because being a music minister. I sort of live between two worlds in two different psalms. Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, and play skillfully before the Lord. So everybody can make a joyful noise to the Lord. But those whom God has given gifts and talents and blessing to for our gifts is to honor God and play skillfully before Him. And you're exactly right. As you're talking about, the pinky and thumb placement, there's precision that's involved in a fretless instrument like a violin or viola or a cello. Whereas acoustic guitar, you've got a fret there. So there's a little bit of a piece of metal to kind of backstop to keep that note in tune. Not so with a violin or a viola or a cello. It's all about balance and precision and holding your jaw a certain way, I would assume. So that's inspiring to hear that, because I think that can kind of be a little bit of a metaphor of life a little bit, is that I think if we approach what we do with intentionality, and I don't know of a string player who doesn't have intentionality, who's a good string player like you are, who approaches their talent with just a whatever mentality. You have to be mentally acute and aware and on top of it and care about the details and the precision. And I think that honors God in doing that when you play skillfully before Him. Well, hey, tell us about some fun things that Laurie and company like to do. I know you're a pet lover. I'm a pet lover as well too. But tell us about some fun things maybe that you guys like to do at your household, or when Kurt's not in Tokyo or Germany or London.
Oh yes. Well, with Kurt, we've eaten some really good meals because my husband flies around the world and eats at
I'll bet.
really good restaurants in other countries.
Yeah.
So he comes back and he wants a good meal. So I try to cook and keep up with that, but we sometimes go out to eat. And I didn't even know I like steak until Kurt took me to have real steak. And,
like Ruth Chris?
Yes, took me there, and Fleming's is his favorite. So, but it's not my favorite, but I now understand.
I've had the prime rib at Fleming's, and it's just unbelievable.
Yes, that's what he and I do, and we like to take walks in the neighborhood. But my daughter and I, we like the water. We live by the beach. We like stand-up paddling or getting in the water.
Cool.
And we've gone hiking and skiing together.
Yeah. As
a family, and that's what we do. Yeah. Lately, I've been gardening. I've been working on my garden just in general, but I grow vegetables. Yeah. And then I cook with them. I have all kinds of herbs.
Yeah.
So that's what I do lately.
Yeah, my wife too. We have a little kind of a herb garden area, and it's nothing like some actual fresh parsley or fresh oregano on whatever you're cooking. It makes quite a difference.
It does.
And it makes the
fresh
house...
tomato.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes the house smell awesome too.
Yes, it does.
So I didn't know that you paddleboarded. You do the whole...
Yeah, I mean, I don't do it all the time, but at this time of year, I think about it all the time.
Yeah.
It's just, it's fun.
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful time of year to be able to do any of that. We were just on the beach this past Sunday, and even when it's overcast, it's still nice. We live in Orange County. We're blessed.
Yes.
So to be able to do that. Well, Laurie, this has flown by this time, as I knew that it would, because you're a fun person to talk to, and we've gotten to know you and got to know your heart. So the last question is really an easy question, and it could be even a short answer if you like, and that is, what kind of coffee or tea do you like?
I like hot chocolate. I like herb teas.
Good.
Caffeine makes me a little crazy.
Yeah.
So I mostly don't have it, but I have chocolate, which is actually a little bit similar.
Good for you. We've had a couple guests who are either work as baristas, or they kind of give these really fancy orders of coffee, and I like your answer. I like hot chocolate. That's good. That's a good answer. You're going to probably be much healthier than the rest of us.
There's too much sugar in hot chocolate.
That's true. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Beyond Sunday with Laurie Driskill. It's been a joy to be able to get to know her more and to be able to hear about her family and her life and her passion with music and in teaching. And if you want to watch more episodes of Beyond Sunday, you can always scroll backwards and find our past episodes. You can find us online through a link with our website, with the church website, www.kindredchurch.org, or you can search us on our YouTube channel at Kindred Church Anaheim Hills, or you can download this podcast in any podcast app. Find us on Facebook or Instagram. For now, it's been a joy to have you, Laurie, and thank you for joining us on this episode of Beyond Sunday. We hope to see you next week. God bless.
Thanks for joining this episode of Beyond Sunday, brought to you by Kindred Church. For updates and new episodes, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Kindred Church Anaheim Hills, or join us on Facebook or on our website at www.kindredchurch.org.